Okay, great. So welcome everyone to the second day of Mental Health Awareness Week, where our theme is on loneliness. And so this is day 2. And today what we are going to look at is what is mental health and what is loneliness and ways to deal and cope with loneliness. Yesterday we looked at community and connection and explored that, and we had some really courageous, personal, heartwarming, raw sharing occur yesterday, and the recording of that is available on the website, and today's recording will also be available on the Happy Life Habits website, and I'll share details of that at the end. But yeah, so we've got a series of events happening. 4 days worth of events we've got happening. So as I mentioned, today is day 2, tomorrow will be day 3, and day 4 on Thursday, and I'll give you details of those in a moment. But just as an introduction, my name is Shailen Shah. I'm a happiness coach, speaker, and trainer, trained in the science of happiness, and through Happy Life Habits, positively impacting people's happiness and well-being levels. And what we've got with the series of events is a group of different organizations, individuals, and individuals and organizations coming together to help bring you this Mental Health Awareness Week. And we have MiEB in Enfield and Barnet, we have Authentic Responses, we have MHAW Connect, we have Sonal Dave, we have Aum Consultancy, we have Manish Gohil, as well as the Asian Parent Group and some of the other groups he looks after, Young Janes, and our sponsors who've helped our Barnett's Consultancy. So it's all of these organizations coming together to help share about mental health and loneliness, and to help, raise that awareness and break the taboo of not being able to talk about these things, and to make it relatable to everyone. And that's what we're working with. So really big thank you to all the organizations for their support in this endeavor. So I'd ask 0 to 10, not using number 7 where you are. So just use that as a checkpoint to be aware of where you're at. And a definition, or a couple of definitions. So WHO, the World Health Organization, defined mental health as a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. So there's a few key things here. So it's one, a state of well-being. It's the individual realizing their own abilities, being able to cope with the normal stresses of life, whatever normal may be, work productively and fruitfully, and also to make a contribution to community. So community is a big aspect of our whole well-being, as we ventured into looking at yesterday and continue throughout the week. Another definition, which I believe is one which MiEB has shared, and Martin, please correct me if I am wrong. It's mental health is about being able to think, feel, and react in a way that you need and that you want, which is a nice, quite succinct, clear definition. And there are conditions that can affect our mood, thinking, and behavior, and any condition that disrupts an individual's every day of life is something that we can take away from our mental health. And we have a spectrum of mental health, of being in good mental health and not so good mental health, and we can be anywhere along that spectrum. But we will find out and discover more about mental health with Martine in a moment. So as I mentioned, yesterday we had a discussion on community and connection, and some real personal journeys and stories shared on that, which resonated and related to us. And as I shared, the recording of that is available. Today, we are looking at mental health and loneliness. And so we have Martine from MiEB in Enfield and Barnet. She'll be sharing with us. She's the Wellbeing Learning and Activities Manager at a charity. She coordinates and also teaches courses and workshops and other activities, including a gardening club. And Martine will share what mental health is, what loneliness is, and share some resources which are available for us to either help ourselves or to help others deal with this. And then after Martine has shared, we'll have Hansa share. She's from Aum Consultancy, and she will share on how to overcome loneliness. Hansa is an author, a coach, and a speaker. She's written a few books on stress and is a stress expert. And she also came on the Happy Life Habits Inspiration Point podcast last year. So that's, if you want to listen in on that, it's available on the website. So those are our speakers today. Tomorrow, we have Sonal, who's joined us today, Sonal Day. She's a celebrant, she's a Toastmaster, she's a magistrate. She plays a variety of roles, and she helps people with their confidence in public speaking. And she will be sharing on stress and anxiety in the workplace and how to offer support, how we can help our colleagues. And she'll share some of her own experiences of her experiencing these things in the workplace. And then on Thursday, we have Priya Shah from Authentic Responses. They're an organization that helps people who are on the helplines helping others and offers training to them. And she will be sharing on suicide prevention with us, which I think is a real important topic as part of the whole setup. So mental health, loneliness, depression, stress, suicide prevention, all very closely linked to each other. The Mental Health Foundation has set the theme of loneliness as the theme for Mental Health Awareness Week. And 3 key things they share in an article, which I want to bring to your attention, are that loneliness is the feeling we experience when there is a mismatch between our social connections with that we have and those that we need or want. So there's a mismatch. So we have a certain amount of social connections, but we may be needing and wanting more than what we currently have. So that's one aspect. They've also found that the warmth of relationships throughout life has a great impact on our life satisfaction and health. And I'll share a little bit more on the science of this later today and through the week. And I think this last one is a real eye-opener for me of, well, and I know but an understandable one, where during lockdowns, loneliness has trebled compared to pre-pandemic levels, because we've all been isolated and not being able to connect with each other. So that is the things that we're working with. So as I mentioned, that's the theme we're looking at, and I'm going to invite Martine to share first. So as I said, Martine is from the Charity Mind, and specifically the Enfield and Barnet branch. Very versed in mental health and helping to provide services and train and teach and create workshops and share workshops for people to help support their mental health. And I say welcome, Martine. And if everyone who's watching at the moment, if you want to switch off your videos at this point in time, that would be great. And if you go to view, and if you keep yourself on mute, that would be perfect as well. And if you go to view and you choose speaker view, then you'll be able to see Martine, Hansa, and myself a bit more clearly on that. And Hansa, I'm just going to take you off spotlight for now, and then we'll bring you back in.
Yeah, no problem.
Afterwards. Excellent. So, Martine.
Thank you, Shirley.
Welcome, and please share.
It's great to know that so many people have joined this evening, and hopefully what I'm going to be able to do is say a bit more about mental health, although Shirley said quite a bit already, and particularly some practical ways that we can support our mental health, and that does link to overcoming loneliness in quite a significant way. And then what we at Mind in Enfield and Barnet do, what sort of services we provide, and how they do link to some of the practical ways to support ourselves. So I have to be fairly close to the screen because otherwise I can't see it. So if it looks like I'm jumping out at you, I do apologise.
Yeah, no,
Otherwise, yeah, it'll be a little bit peculiar. So I'm going to try and share the screen now.
Yeah, and while you do that, just to add, if you've got any questions, you can put them in the chat, but please, for the moment, put the questions specific for clarity on what's been shared. And then after both Martine and Hansa have shared, we'll have a proper Q&A where any questions related to today or mental health or loneliness in general, you are able to ask, and we will do our best to answer.
Great. So I'm going to share these slides, which, as you can see, are talking about mental health in the community, some of the issues, the ideas of what mental health is, and a practical tool, which is 5 ways to wellbeing, and then how that links to the Mind in Enfield and Barnet services. So looking at mental health in the community. So if at any point you've got any questions linked to what I'm saying, as in I don't understand, then please do put something in the chat, and then I'll know that there's something I need to pick up on. I don't know, Shailene, if you could keep an eye on the chat. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely, we'll do.
So if it doesn't make sense, then yeah, if you can raise that, that'd be really helpful. So in the general population, 1 in 4 people will experience a mental health problem in any given year. Now, when I started doing community work about 20 years ago, at that point, it was said that 1 in 8 people at some time in their lives would experience something. So the numbers of people with mental health issues has increased, and that doesn't seem to just be because people are talking about it more. So it's an issue that many more people do talk about, which is good, but it looks as if it's a bigger issue than it has been. And particularly in the COVID times, it looks as if it has increased by about 8 to 10% in the population. So we're more aware of it, and we're more concerned about it. And the interesting thing is that it does relate to social issues, so the things that are happening around us, as opposed to something to do with our biology, which we can't do very much about. So things like, and really at the top of the list is isolation. So being having the sense that you're on your own. Work issues, money issues, debt, housing issues, things to do with relationships, they can all affect mental health. But the interesting thing is then that the answers, solutions can also be social. So that we don't have to think that if we have a mental health problem, there's nothing we can do about it. The chances are it's happened because of these types of issues, and they can be addressed. If we think about society as a whole, nobody is immune. So anybody can experience a mental health problem. The chances are that if you have more money, you are less likely to have a mental health problem. And if you do have a mental health problem, the chances are that you'd be able to resolve it more quickly. But you would still experience it. Chances are you could experience it. And it also has a big impact on the workplace. So it's the #1 reason why people are off work. And that has a huge cost to the economy. So it's estimated that it's 34.9 billion. And it's the main cost of presenteeism. So people who are present, but they're not well. So they're not functioning well. So it's definitely something to be aware of in all walks of life. So as Shailene said, there are definitions of what we mean by mental health. And there is this idea, the World Health Organization saying that it's a state of well-being, which means that the individual can realise their own abilities, cope with normal stresses of life, work productively, fruitfully, able to make a contribution. It means in very simple terms that we can go about our lives in a way that we can function in all the aspects that we want to function in. It doesn't mean that we're happy all the time, but it means that we can do what we need to do. We can take care of ourselves, we can associate with other people well, and we can take care of other people. So as we know, that doesn't go well for everybody all the time. So the question is, at what point would we say there's a mental health problem? So if we say that there is a spectrum and we go from positive mental health to mental illness or having a mental health problem, the question is, has this state of not being able to function, so not being able to get up, or getting up but not being able to do what we need to do, not being able to work, not wanting to see people, that kind of thing. So the day-to-day things that we generally want to do and can usually do. If that goes on for a number of days and we don't seem to be able to pull ourselves out of it, then we would say there's a problem. So if somebody's experiencing a low mood period, and it's sort of like you have a bad weekend, okay, we're aware of that. If it goes on for a week, that's difficult. If it goes on for a couple of weeks, we would start to say there could be a problem here. So this is why it's difficult, because some people have an idea of what is the way that they want to be, and they're not happy with how they are. But somebody else might say, with the same circumstances, well, okay, that's fine to me. So it's quite subjective. It's not like somebody's got a broken leg and you can see there's a problem, you know, the leg's not working, we need to fix the leg. It's mental health isn't quite as clear cut as that. And there can be cases of people that you might say, well, they appear to have a mental health problem, but as far as they're concerned, they don't. And equally, somebody else may not appear to have a mental health problem, but they're insisting that they do. So we have to make kind of judgments for ourselves, and you know, our community makes kind of judgments and estimates on what's going on. So if we think about the common mental health problems, the key ones that most people with mental health issues have is the first three. So it's anxiety, depression, and OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder. So over 50% of people with mental health issues would have one or a combination of those three. And then there are other conditions like bipolar, which is swinging from different moods, schizophrenia, which is not really being able to see what, as far as most people would see it, is reality, and personality disorder, which is where your behaviour actually is not helpful, and other people find that difficult. So if we were to look at some signs and symptoms for the first three, this is the type of information, if anyone's interested, you can see on the National Mind website very easily. It's got a really good information section. So if you're ever curious, it's a really good resource. It's really worth looking at. So if we look at anxiety, I'll just move myself over here. As it says, it's something that we all experience from time to time, but if it becomes overwhelming, so it's too severe, and constant, so it's going on and on, we can't function, and that's when it becomes a problem. And we can see that there's particular symptoms that somebody might show. So physically, there might be some things going on, and also the way that they think and they feel. That there's some kind of typical signs that this is anxiety. In a very, very simple kind of nutshell, anxiety is worry about the future. You know, we haven't got there yet, but we're anxious about, we're worrying about what's going to happen. But linked to what is a mental health problem, if it's very severe and it's going on too long, then that's the problem. So then again, if you look at the National Mind website, you can see information about depression. And you hear that expression a lot. I feel depressed. So you feel low, you don't feel motivated. And we would hope that that feeling would pass. But again, if it's extreme and it's going on for too long, then there's a problem. And again, there are some psychological and physical and behavioural signs that somebody is depressed. But very, very simply, depression is linked to concern about the past, not feeling good about the past, and kind of not being able to move on from that. And when it comes to obsessive compulsive disorder, there are some common obsessions. So things that we think about, and compulsions, so things that we do and we can't control that. So again, just like any other mental health issue, we can show signs of this. Anyone can show signs of this to some extent, but if it becomes extreme and it's going on for too long, then there's a problem. So it's very typical to have thoughts that repeat, so obsessions and actions that we perhaps do more than we need to do, like checking the door, have we really locked the door, and that kind of thing. The question is it disturbing our sort of day-to-day lives? That's when we think there might be a problem. So moving on to what we can do for positive mental health, there is an idea that there are 5 ways to well-being. And this is recognised by the World Health Organization. National Mind recognise it. It's not the only list that you will come up with and you will find, but it's quite a nice, handy list to start thinking about the practical ways to function, which could overcome difficulties, but also if we do them on a regular basis, they can help prevent having a difficulty in the first place. So the first one is connect, which means that we have that feeling of being alongside, and that can include our own bodies, because it's quite easy to have lots of thoughts and not even pay attention to our own bodies. So connecting to our bodies is an important kind of key step. And we can also connect. So this is where it's going to counter loneliness, connect with other people, but obviously in a way that kind of works. So we can connect with people. Some people connect very well to other living things and are buoyed up very much by having connections with animals, with plants, with nature. They feel that there is more than just themselves, and that can be a helpful link. The next idea is to observe. So again, it's a really helpful way to get outside of just our own thoughts. If we notice what's going on around us and we are curious about it, that is a way of lifting ourselves out of just reflecting on the past, what might happen in the future, that kind of thing. And we can even do that with our own bodies, just noticing our own breath and how that is, and kind of playing around with that. It's a really effective and quick way to resolve that issue of getting kind of lost in your own thoughts. The next one is learn, and that can happen anywhere. It doesn't mean just going to a class. I mean, this session today and the other sessions that Shailene's hosting are ways to learn. And you can just have conversations with people. You can be walking around and strike up a conversation with somebody, and you can learn things. So it doesn't have to just be in a formal way. And the next one is to be physically active. I don't know if any of you, I certainly are not drawn to this. Usually I would shy away from this one, because I always associate it with running around in the cold when I was a child. But of course, we can be talking about things that are much more gentle than that and more comfortable than that. We can be active in the home, doing home care, housework is very physically demanding, and it can be very positive for us. And in fact, if we don't move, we are actually putting a strain on our bodies. We need to have movement to help the blood actually get back into the heart and be pumped around and that kind of thing with the leg muscles. So walking, just a gentle walk, is really beneficial, and it can very much lift the mood. The last idea is to give. So we might think automatically, oh, that means finding something, a thing that we give to somebody. But some of the most potent things that we can give is we can give other people our attention and demonstrate that we're giving our time to other people, and that's a gift. And we can give gifts, we can give material gifts, and to give gifts is just as beneficial to the giver as the receiver, if not more. So as it says at the end, that can be done in a variety of settings, and it doesn't have to be expensive, but it needs attention. We need to think how we can develop these practices and bring them into our lives in a regular way. So thinking about Mind in Enfield and Barnet, just in really simple terms, we've got 3 departments that are both in Enfield and Barnet. Less so Barnet for the first one. So we've got advocacy and advice. We've got therapy, which is basically counselling, and wellbeing. So the way that relates to the 5 ways to wellbeing is that to connect, we can support people to do that through one-to-one counselling. We have a distress service called Sanctuary that operates in Barnet and Enfield. So if somebody's really struggling with their mental health, we can offer 3 or 4 quite depth sessions so that the person can explore what's going on and what kind of support is going to be helpful. The courses that enables people to connect with each other, and the various groups that we run, and more practical activities. The same goes for Observe. All of those things can help people to notice things about themselves and be encouraged to notice things about other people, other things around. So in many different ways that can be encouraged. All of those services can help people to learn quite specific things. So the courses can help people to learn in a more formal way, but more informal ways of learning can happen in these other ways as well. To get a physical, so we do groups. We have a chair-based yoga group. I believe in Barnet there's actually a floor-based yoga group as well. We do things like the gardening, and hopefully we'll be doing many more of those types of things. So sort of gentle and non-threatening physical practices. And then we've also got the practice of welcoming people to volunteer with us in all sorts of different ways, which is a way of giving time and attention and care to other people, which we're always open to that. So if anyone wants to know the details of everything that we do, that's our website at the bottom. And I'd welcome your questions when we have the Q&A. So thanks for listening.
Thank you for that, Martine. Yeah, so after Hansa has shared, we'll open up for Q&A. So anything that's been shared so far or shared afterwards, or anything else that you want to find out more about, we'll have that opportunity there. Now that the 5 action steps for positive mental health, very interesting. I'll share a bit about that, or how I see a connection to those things afterwards. So thank you. I am just going to ask Hansa if you can make sure your video is on, and I will add you to the spotlight here. So
shall I stop sharing now?
Yes, I think that'd be great. And I will just take you off from spotlight for now and then add you back in after. Thank you, Martine. Brilliant. So Hansa, Martine's laid the foundation of what mental health is, what loneliness is, some of the things we can do to help with that, and what you're going to help address is how we can cope with loneliness. And you are on mute at the moment, so just come off mute and please start the conversation. Hansa, you're on mute.
Okay.
Yep.
Can you all hear me now? Okay.
Yep.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. And I hope you have found Martine's talk very enlightening. I certainly found it very enlightening. And thank you, Martine, for a wonderful overview of mental health issues and the symptoms and how to overcome it as well. So I'm going to talk about overcoming loneliness, and the title of my talk is Overcoming Loneliness, a 5-step process to help you build a thriving support network. So in this presentation, I will explain some common causes of loneliness and present a simple 5-step model to help you build a thriving social support network. And research says that people who have a very strong support network are more happier and have higher levels of well-being and lower levels of mental health issues. So building a very strong support network is fundamental to alleviating loneliness, increasing happiness levels, and increasing well-being. So my aim today is to make you aware that taking steps to build this thriving support network will yield you multiple benefits, not just to overcome loneliness, but many, many other benefits, as you will find out through this book. So firstly, let me take you through some common sources of loneliness. So sometimes we kind of just slip into loneliness without being aware, that that's happening to us. And all of a sudden we find that we haven't got people to connect with, and we haven't got support network around us. So some of the common causes that some of you might identify with is firstly the lack of confidence to connect with others because you have a low self-esteem. So if you think you're not good enough, or people will be judging what you do and what you say, you will be less likely to connect and build a social circle around you. So building a social circle of like-minded people can help you actually to build your self-worth and confidence. So it's worth going for it. Another one is the loss of trust due to past relationship issues and the fear of being hurt again. So for example, if you have had a very bad relationship breakdown, you will be less inclined to trust other people and to build relationships, especially intimate relationships with other people. But when you actually take the risk to connect and explore new relationships, this actually alleviates the prospect of long-term loneliness and isolation and gets you out of this sense of entrapment. Another reason of loneliness is if you move to a new location far from your usual support circle. So you might move house to a new location, you might move to a new country, you might move jobs, and this means it takes you away from the usual people that you're close to and that you call back on for support. And when those people aren't around, or you are not able to access them easily, you can slip into a state of loneliness. But actually, when you begin to build a network of groups and people around you, this reignites your new sense of belonging. Loneliness can also occur if you lose a closed loved one, so a closed loved one passing away, or moving, or simply a child moving to university. So a loved one moving away or losing a loved one is another cause of loneliness. So when you look for support with the grieving process and find options for filling this void, it not only helps you to heal the loss, but it also helps you to connect again with people and have support around you. One other one is having people with similar interests around you. And so it's worth, finding people, like-minded people with similar interests that you can share and enjoy those interests with. And the last cause of loneliness on my list that I can think of is simply having the lack of energy to devote to relationships, perhaps due to ill health or having a very hectic work life or family life. And at the end of the day, you get so drained that you just haven't got the energy to devote to building relationships. So making well-being your number one priority by indulging in energy boosting initiatives brings renewed motivation to socialize and interact with others. So you may identify with some of the things that I'm saying, and if that's the case, then it is really worth moving forward to connect with more people. So moving on to building a social network and how you do that. Firstly, it's important to say that we need different kinds of support at different times in our life. So you may need moral support at some point, you may need practical support, you may need emotional support, and these are all different kinds of support. So as human beings, we need practical, emotional, moral support at different times. So it is worth thinking about what your specific needs are in these main categories. So for instance, you may go out and have fun with friends, but you might find it difficult to talk about painful emotions. So that way you're having fun, but you haven't got that emotional support that you need. Or you might have somebody who gives you a lot of moral support, is there for you, but no one to help you with young children or practical things or DIY things in the house. So it's worth kind of thinking about, do you have adequate moral support from people, adequate practical support from people, and practical, adequate emotional and psychological support from people. A really good starting point to developing your support network is to think about a time when you actually had a very strong social network, and think about how you actually had this in place. You know, what happened that you had a very thriving, robust social circle. What did you do? You know, how did you achieve it? How can you do the same again? What would you need to get to that point again? Make a list of all these things, and then begin to take the first steps to recreating that for you again. So remember, if you've done it before, then you do know how to do it. So it's just thinking back on how you did that and recreating that again. And in addition to that, the following process will give you additional guidance. So this is the model and process that I use to support my clients who are experiencing loneliness. And it's a very structured, a 5-step process. So firstly, make a list of all your contacts. You know, so think about everybody that you know at work, at home, family, friends. Who are the people that you've lost touch with? You know, extended family, cousins, work colleagues that you've lost touch with, and really, really, you know, go as comprehensive as you can with it. Even make list of casual acquaintances. You know, the person you chat with, you know, on the post office counter, the person that you chat with when you walk in your dog every morning. So any and every person that you have connected in the past and that you're connecting in the future, and make a long list. So start to make the list and keep adding up on it as you think of other people. So now you got all the people that you already have a connection with in the past or in the present. Then from this list, you tick 9 people. So you tick 3 people who potentially can offer you moral support, 3 people who potentially can offer you practical support, and 3 people who potentially can offer you emotional support. And then step 3 is that you gradually begin to build connections with these people. So you may begin by sending them a text, or then have a short telephone call, then invite them for a coffee or a meal. And over a period of time, you develop these relationships very, very slowly. So for example, if you bump into somebody when you walking your dog, you're lonely, but you bump into somebody when you walking your dog every morning. Tomorrow, when you bump into this person, you say, oh, it's lovely to see you. You know, we always kind of see each other every morning when we walking the dog. Do you live locally? You know, and the person might say, oh yeah, I just live the other side. All right. So what's your dog called? And then you begin that conversation, and then you say, oh well, I really enjoyed our conversation. Perhaps we could, you know, have a coffee at that lovely coffee place on the corner. And then slowly you begin to develop, initiate those conversations and develop that relationship. And then over a period of time, so you do this with all the 9 people over a period of time. And then lastly, you review your network and make changes as you need after several months. So for example, this person that you meet, you think potentially he's a good listener, and potentially he might offer very good emotional support, but actually he turns out to be a DIY person, and he can offer you a lot of practical support. So then you might want to add somebody else who can offer you emotional support. But always make sure that you stay connected with these 9 people. And the reason that I say 9 people is that in reality, at any given time, a couple of those people may not be available for you. So somebody's mom might be ill, or somebody's on holiday, or somebody's very busy with work for whatever reason. And potentially a couple of people may not be available, in which case there is somebody there always for the different kinds of support that you need. So this is why I always recommend minimum of 9 people, but by all means, you can have more than that. So let me demonstrate what I'm trying to put across with a few case studies that I've come across. So firstly, there's Amanda. So Amanda was very close to her husband and always relied on him for moral, practical, and emotional support. But he had a sudden heart condition and was hospitalized for a long period. Amanda slipped into loneliness and found it hard to support herself and her husband until she applied the 5-step process that I've just described. So I think there are a lot of us who rely on one person for all of our needs. And if something happened to that one person, we would be in trouble. So, always broaden your social circle, always have a wide, robust, and don't just rely on 1 or 2 people for all your support. Second case study is about Vincent. So Vincent had a very difficult divorce. Despite being attracted to other women, he did nothing about it because he did not want to get hurt again. He had a very acrimonious divorce and he really didn't want to go through all that again with another woman. But so after 10 years, he began to feel acutely lonely, which affected his mental well-being. And when we talked about the 5-step process and the list of 9 people, he took the risk to begin to connect with one of the women from his list of 9, who was an ex-colleague. So his first attempt was unsuccessful, but he tried again with somebody else, and he struck a very good friendship that provided much needed companionship. So if you've been hurt again, still take the risk. It may not work out the first time, but it will work out again. And rather than being trapped with this sense of loneliness where you are really afraid to take the risk, by taking the risk, eventually you will build those connections for much needed companionship and intimacy in the long run. And my last case study is Randeep. He was offered a promotion abroad as a senior manager. He missed his family and friends terribly and colleagues desperately, as he was in a foreign country with a completely different culture. And so when we did this work from his list of 9, he took the initiative to talk to his neighbor in the adjoining flat and a colleague at work, who both introduced him to others in the community in the new country. And so eventually, through these 2 contacts, he got to know more people, and eventually he became part of the community. So I hope these 3 case studies help you to understand and make alive the concepts that I have presented. So in summary, taking small gradual steps to build a 3-fold social support circle of moral, practical, and emotional support not only alleviates loneliness, but has many other benefits, such as building confidence, learning new skills, learning new hobbies, having interests of different kinds, having fun, enhancing well-being, and creating a sense of belonging and community. So that's my bit, and thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions or about anything that I've talked about, we can address those in the Q&A session, or you could go into my website, which is hansapankhania.com, if you wanted to explore any of these concepts further. Okay, over to you, Shailene.
Brilliant. No, thank you, Hansa, for that sharing. I found that idea of the moral, practical, and emotional, the 3-fold, really interesting. And again, I think something that some of us may have, but haven't consciously thought about it. So that was very, as Rachel just shared, very practical approach of working those things. So that's Great, thank you for that. And also, some of what you shared of the examples of loneliness, of moving from one place to another, or a change in relationship, were the things that our speakers yesterday shared. So we had a connection back to that, which was great in that manner. And some of the aspects of rebuilding communities or connections coming through. So that's great. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share a little bit of science and a few other bits and pieces related to our topic, and then we'll go into the Q&A. So it just gives a chance for people to think about what questions they want to ask, and you can put those questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand to say if you want to ask a question, and we can have those requested at Q&A time. And if you do want to ask a question, but you don't want it to be recorded, let us know, and we can pause the recording at that time and address that question in that manner. So be thinking about those things there. I'm just going to take it off spotlight for a moment, Hansa, and then I'll add you and Martine back in a moment.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I am just going to share my screen again. So can you all see the screen okay?
Yeah.
Brilliant. So again, thank you, Martine and Hansa. There was a lot of rich material shared in there, and a slide I shared yesterday, which I wasn't going to share today, but I feel appropriate to share, so I pulled it in, is this one. So in Happy Life Habits, I often talk about the 4 dimensions of either health or happiness or the human being, which many of us will be familiar with. It's the physical, the body, the mental, the mind, the emotional, social, our feelings and our relationships, and the spiritual, our soul. And the 5 things for well-being, that the 5 mental health actions or aspects of well-being that Martine shared, of connect, observe, learn, be physically active, and to give. I see mapping into these. So connect is that emotional, social aspect. Observe is being aware of our thoughts and feelings, which again, mental and emotional. Learning, definitely in the mental arena. Be physically active, the physical body, and giving and volunteering, being in the spiritual realm, but also all of these, many of these connecting across these different ones. So what's important here is that in our lives we do things for each of these areas, and we build habits for each of these areas, and we build practices for each of these different areas to help our happiness and help support us and build our resilience. So that was one. This is another slide which I often share, and which I think is again relevant today. So it's the happy chemicals, so dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. And Martine, shared that, with mental health and with loneliness, there's aspects of depression, weaker relationships, anxiety, and so forth, fear. And some of these are due to these happy chemicals being at lower levels in our system, and stress chemicals being at a higher level. So one of the things that we share with Happy Life, there are things we can do which can help boost those levels and help alleviate some of those aspects. There is obviously a need for us to also go to the doctor, see a therapist, and do those things as well. So, and take the medicine. So it's not a case of by doing these things we don't do the other things, but we do these things in complementary with the other things and see what works for us. And the things that we can do are setting goals and meditation and gratitude. There's kindness and compassion, which is again touch and contact. Gifts, Martine mentioned, and gifts and gratitude, and the gift of time, attention, and energy with someone, and being present is one of the most important gifts we can give. Sunlight and exercise being there, laughter, and all of these things we can do with other people and be connected. So that is a takeaway to keep in mind. So with 8 billion people on this planet, loneliness should not exist. And we should be able to do things. That's the problem, that loneliness exists. And it's a problem which often, not completely, but often is created by us as people. And what we can do is we are part of that solution. And by being a little bit more friendlier, kinder, aware and connected, we can help alleviate, the loneliness feeling, both for ourselves and for others. And it's about, going out of our comfort zone and just being into those virtues of, friendliness and kindness and being aware and being connected and doing more of those things and reaching out and, making contact with others. And all it takes is a genuine smile, a hello, or a how are you? And we're all capable of doing that. So the challenge for you guys this week is be aware of that and just put it into play a little bit more so over these next few days and just see the difference it makes for you and for others. So both Hansa and Martine shared a little bit about why relationships are important. And Robert Waldinger is a Harvard professor, and he's done a study, he's part of a study which has been done over 75 years, and he's got a brilliant TED talk on this. And the study studied human happiness for teenagers to old age, and they measured it every 2 years. And they were asking these questions to these individuals every 2 years over a 75-year period. And what they found is our social connections are the most important for our well-being. So the most important, they say, is for our well-being. And with the definition we shared at the beginning of what Mental Health Foundation has shared about, social connections being being good for our well-being, it's connected to this. The other thing, the 3 lessons they took away from this study were social connections are better for our health and our well-being. Loneliness kills. And when we're not in a social network, and if we are on our own without those connections, what can be missed is if people are missing their meals or missing their medication or going into some form of neglect or into thought patterns, those things are missed. But we're in connected with other people, whether it's in the workplace, in the home place, or in the community. People can recognize possibly some of these changes and can help address those. So that's why being part of the community and being in social connections is important. It's not the quantity of relationships, it's the quality. And Hansa has shared with us, 9 people we can think of. So that's quality, and it's those 9 split over the 3 of moral, practical, and emotional. And good relationships are good for our body and for our brain. So it's all around mental health, physical health, but also emotional and social and spiritual. So those were the key things from this study that I wanted to share. Many of you are aware that I talk a lot about gratitude and journaling. Gratitude and journaling is good for our mental health and our emotional health. And with MiEB in Enfield Barnet, we do a workshop on sharing benefits of gratitude and journaling. And there's also a 30-day course that Happy Life Habits offers. But the key thing here is something that Martine shared regarding gifts. And this is the slide I want to share. When we practice gratitude, we're recognizing blessings in our life. We're thinking of the gift that we've been given. And we're the receiver of that gift. And that's often what we think about, me, myself, and I. But when we're going to the mode of gratitude, we think of the blessings we've got, the gifts that we've been given. But what we also do is we think of where that gift has come from, whether it's nature or it's a higher power or it's a family or it's a friend. We think of where that gift has come from. And in doing so, when we think of where that gift has come from, it helps improve our social connection and helps us feel more connected with nature, with the world, and with each other. So it's us being the receiver, it's being aware of the gift we've been given and being aware of where that gift has come from. And if we're able to express our thanks and gratitude and appreciation to the giver of that gift, in whatever way, maybe. So before we go into the Q&A, I'm going to share a story. And the story I'm going to share today is one of my own experience of someone showing these aspects of friendliness and kindness and helping in that way. But just two stories very quickly. The first story is that in my career, when I first got my first job out of graduation, it was with a US-based consultancy. I was based in the UK working in the IT field, and then it got posted out in the US for a few weeks. So went there, was in the US for a few weeks, and those few weeks became more than a few weeks, it became many more weeks, and it ended up being a few months eventually. But I ended up spending my one and only birthday on my own away from home. I was with a work colleague, so that was okay, it was fine, but it wasn't the same. When you've been used to being emigrating from East Africa and being in a household which is extended family and lots of people around and constantly, you know, sharing birthdays with each other, and having then a birthday where you're away from your family, you're away from your friends, you're away from your social communities, you're not doing the regular things that you do with physical activity, whether it be sports or other aspects, it's difficult, it's tough. So that is one aspect of a clear remembrance. So thereafter, I've never spent my birthday on my own. So I do not wish anyone to have spend their birthday on their own, unless they choose to, which is fine. But it's there. But the quick example of what we can do very easily to, as part of this 8 million solution, is I was at a meditation circle, and Nipun Mehta, he is a TED speaker as well. He is the founder of Service Space, an organization which just works on volunteers and has done some fantastic projects and talks and things. And they have, you know, meditation circles and other projects going on. And I had attended a meditation circle, and Nipun was there himself, over from the US. And there was a huddle of people around there, a few different huddles in there. And I think a talk had finished, we were waiting to have a bite to eat. And I had attended the talk by myself. I was away from everyone, but trying to listen in and to the talk, that the conversation that was in the huddle with Nipun. And he saw I was on my own, and all he did was, you know, called me over, opened up the circle and pulled me in. So that awareness and that gesture and that act of kindness really made me feel warm in the heart, felt me connected, and it struck me. And where I am able to, I do that. And he also, you know, took a step further off later on, introducing me to a few people and letting me connect and converse. And we all can do that. So it's raising our awareness, and it's raising our game in expressing our virtues that we all know of: love, peace, kindness, and doing those things, and not being shy of doing those. So that's the message that I wanted to share. So now we come to the Q&A. So I am going to invite Martine and Hansa back in, and I would invite the audience, if you would like to share any thoughts, any questions, then please, now is the opportunity to ask them. And if you would prefer it not to be recorded, please just, let us know either in the chat or when you come on in, we can pause the recording for that point. So does anyone have any questions? If you don't, I'm going to ask you a question, and I'd like you to then, if you're willing to, please come up and share. And part of the reason, you know, that we're doing these sessions is to raise that awareness, but also to create that sense of community and connection. And in asking this question, that might ask you, and if you think about it and you're willing to share, and you do share, one, it helps you step out of your comfort zone, which is what we need to do to help connect with others. It helps you also think about what you've learned and embed that, and it also helps others remember something from the session and take it further. So the question I'm going to ask you all is, what's one insight or one takeaway from today's session that's struck home for you, and how may you apply that?
Can I say something?
Of course.
So even though I was presenting, I took away something really important, which is like a connection of what I was saying and what Martine was talking about. So she was talking about giving, and you were talking about these millions of people in this world, and we shouldn't have any loneliness, and how we are all responsible for alleviating that. And the thought occurred to me that in my presentation, I actually didn't cover the fact that we should take the initiative to approach somebody that we know is lonely and encourage them to come out of their shells. And so that's a really good way of giving, what Martine was talking about in terms of giving, and a good way of us taking responsibility for alleviating the loneliness in the world. And I kind of just, it struck, I wondered, and it struck me that I actually didn't cover this point in my presentation, but when I was listening to you, I put what Martine had said and put the two together. So I think another thing I need to add is, if you know somebody who's lonely, then reach out to them, and do your bit of giving by alleviating their loneliness.
That's one, that's important, and that's good. And I would actually go further and say, even if you don't know they're lonely, because sometimes we don't know people are feeling lonely, we can't tell, still reach out. So the key thing is just reach out to people and connect. And like, as you said, a smile, a hello, and a how are you is all it takes. So thank you for that. And just to add to that, if people do want a gentle approach to working with that and want to do something during this week, there's a set of videos I've created which are only 5 to 7 minutes long. There's one each day, dropped from yesterday, which said shared on what is mental health. There's one today which was on about stress. There's one tomorrow which is on thinking. A day after it's on worry, and on the final day on Friday it's on loneliness and depression. These are shared on the Happy Life Addicts Facebook group. They're also on the website, where all of the information that we've put together and these videos that we're sharing is in the blog article, the Mental Health Awareness Week blog article, which is the latest one there. And as the videos are released for this week, they'll be added there. There's additional information there. There's links to all the speakers for this week, to their connections. All that's there. There. But those videos, what it has is it's got a little bit of information. It's got maybe a story or a quote from like Brené Brown, the connection being the most important thing for us, and use our life meaning and purpose is one. But at the end of that video, there's a little action for everyone to do, and it just takes a few minutes to reach out to someone and either share something from the video or do an action. So it's gentle, and it can just give you that prompt to start doing more of those things over this week if you would like to. So people are putting a few things on chat. So support group is important. It's not just one person, absolutely. The 5-step process they find really helpful. Communicate to all you encounter, so smile to all and greet them. So that's great. Does anyone else have any other questions they would like to ask, or any other feedback? And what I will actually do is I'll stop the recording, because I feel that people may be yes, please, Martine.
The training that I did, the first training that he does, I think it's called inner engineering, which I think is possible for people to do online for free now. And then the next step in this training is, I'm not sure if I would say this right, Bhava Spandana. I have no idea what that means. I never did. In fact, my partner at the time called it spongy banana, which which is always what I think of first. But the most powerful thing about it was that over 3 days, we were encouraged, I don't want to say how, because it kind of spoils it if anyone goes into this training, but we were encouraged to have a very broad understanding of the sort of person that we were and the difficulties that we had presented to the world. You know, the worst things that we could possibly think of ourselves, and share that. And the first impression when I came into the group, it's quite a big group, I would say about 50 people, was, there were some very rich people there. There were some very well-connected people. Some of them had very strong professional lives, you know, everything. You'd imagine everything was fine. And then you heard the stories, and the thing I took away, and I still have it to this day, is you never know what's going on with people.
Yes.
And you can make all sorts of assumptions that somebody's rolling along fine and everything, or equally that, you know, they must have a problem, but actually they don't. So that's the thing that I still carry with me, that you just don't know. And when to take that risk, as Hansa, you're saying, it's very powerful, and you just don't know what's going to happen. And it's wonderful when you make that step, and it can happen at any time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So with for the last 2-3 years when I've been sharing about mental health awareness, the image I've been using is of me sitting on a cliff top looking out to the sea. So that's been used for this, and it's been used for the last 3 years. And that picture I find very powerful, because one, if you look at it, it looks like someone sitting there serene, tranquil, you know, at peace and happy, which is true, and it was at that time. But it could also be, and I share this in the writings, that picture can also be where it's someone who's taking that last look out onto the horizon, onto the sea, before they take a few steps over the edge, and you just can't tell. So what's going on here, we can't tell very easily. So yeah, not to make assumptions or presumptions, and gently, reaching out and asking, how are you? How are you really? Are the things which can help people share and open up on that.
Yeah, it's really good, because recently more people who are very rich, very famous, are all coming out with mental health issues, because the assumption was, if you had a lot of money or if you were famous, you did not experience loneliness or mental health issues. But I think lately a lot of people are opening up and coming forward and sharing their stories. And some of these people are very rich and famous, and they've got all sorts of privileges. But we are making the assumption they're okay. But now we know what's been going on in the minds, like we say, because we can never read anybody's mind unless they share what's going on in there for them.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, two of the quotes that I share in relation to Mental Health Awareness Week, or relationships or connection. One is the Brené Brown one, that connection is why we're all here. It's what gives meaning and purpose to our lives. That's so important and so true, and it's a heart-to-heart, soul-to-soul connection that we're talking about there. But the other one is Robin Williams. So an actor and a comic who's done the fantastic films Mrs. Doubtfire, Good Morning Vietnam, The Fisher King, The Awakening, a whole bunch of fantastic films which have made people laugh. And he's a more community. He went through his challenges and troubles, and ended up taking his own life while he still had so much talent to give. And one of the quotes he shares is, I used to think the worst thing in the world was being alone. It's not. It's being with people who make you feel alone. And that, has really hit home for me, and which is what ties in with, let's not be that person who makes other people feel alone. We've got the capacity and the ability and the responsibility and the proactiveness to just do that little extra step and make that difference. Okay. It doesn't seem like there are any more questions or sharings coming through. I'm going to share one last slide, which is again available in that, actually the two last slides, which is available in the blog article. So this is a self-care practices infographic we've put together, and the different aspects of physical, mental, social, emotional, and spiritual wrap into here. The 5 positive well-being steps that Martine shared connect into here, and many of these things you are already probably doing, but there's some ideas here that you could be doing. And the message is, have a look at this, tick off the ones you're doing, put in some of the ones you aren't doing, but use this as a reminder and as a guide to build these habits into your lifestyle. So that's in that blog article. If you're happy to share your 0 to 10 on the happiness level at the moment, not using the number 7, please feel free to put it in the chat. And Martine asked at the beginning, why can't we use number 7? You can use fractions and you can use decimals. The reason for number 7 is our often go-to. If someone asks you, how are you? We say, oh, fine, when we might not really be. If someone asks you, 0 to 10, where are you at? 7 is often the go-to. By not using 7, we are committing to either being more than 7 or less than 7. That's one reason. 2, by asking you to not use the number 7, your brain's just kicked into gear and asked and got into curiosity mode. Why not number 7? And by saying, okay, I'll tell you at the end, it's paying attention and waiting for that to the end. So all of those are some of the reasons why we approach it in this manner.
That's clever.
Kamal's given you your answer.
Fantastic. So this link here, linktr.ee/happy life habits. If you use that, it's got a section on there for mental health awareness, which will take you to the blog article I've mentioned. It'll also, if you want to connect in any manner, it'll take you there to the website and other things that we're doing. But the blog article link is on here, as well as other events which are happening. So that's the one to use. And we will not go, actually, I am going to just say, if anyone does want to carry on the conversation, put a thumbs up or use the reaction. If you want to go on to Wonder for 10-15 minutes, just use a different platform and have a conversation. If so, then we'll open it up and we'll go there. Otherwise, we will say, great evening. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Martine and Hansa, for your sharing this evening. It's been very beneficial. And I'm glad we've been able to record this and then make it available. And thank you to everyone who's attended in supporting this initiative and being part of it and helping to communicate. And tomorrow we have Sonal Dave. She'll be sharing on stress and anxiety in the workplace and how you can outreach to the work colleagues. And she'll be sharing her own experiences of it. I'll share a little bit of my experience of stress in the workplace, that experience. So you can register again on the website. It's the same Zoom details, but if you register, if there's any changes, we can let you know. And please, feel free to bring a family, friend, or a colleague to these sessions. They're free, and we'd love to help serve you in that way. So thank you all. and hopefully see you all tomorrow evening.